Hi there, today we're going to have a look at understanding NAPLAN data. And NAPLAN is a one-off snapshot of the student, and I want to talk through what the results mean and how you can use it to help your child or your student progress to the next level. So this is just a sample one here, and you can see all the different parts of the assessment, and it describes the different bands. And this is a Year 7 band we're looking at here. It does change with the different year groups from Year 3, Year 5, Year 7 and Year 9. So it has different bands as the student skill develops. So you can see at the very top triangle there, if student's result is right there, in the very top, it means that they're well above the average for the year group. They're achieving at a higher level. Then we're looking at band 9 and 8, and that's above the average. It's quite a high level of skill that the student and the child has. You can see a dot here in this graph, and that dot is showing you in the sample where that specific student sits in comparison to the state and the school. So band 7 and 6 is in the average. If we're looking further down, band 5 for this Year 7 student, if we're looking here, this is at the minimum range of achievement, and that's within the band 5 area. So if a child falls in this category, they're meeting the minimum standards, but it also means there are some gaps that there will be present for that student. So there is some work that we can unpack from this NAPLAN paper to help move that student up to the next band. And it is quite hard for a student to shift a band unless there's a whole lot of targeted teaching and support. And the very bottom bands below that is band 4 and the triangle below that. This is below the national benchmark. There's a whole range of reasons that I've seen students achieving here. One is a range of disabilities that can be impacting the students. One could be a lack of engagement with the assessment or not feeling well on the specific day. There's a whole range of reasons that can impact that student. So it is a snapshot. If the student is in that band 4, they'd be targeted at schools with some additional support in literacy and numeracy. Here's a sample of a student's NAPLAN in Year 7. And you can see on the far left here, that's the spelling. Okay, you can see here a sample of a student's Year 7 NAPLAN results. The first data that's shown is the reading results. And you can see the dot in band 5, that's the student's individual response. So this student is achieving at a minimum standard in Year 7. So there's going to be some gaps in some areas. Usually, we'll go through this in a moment later. There's usually gaps in terms of inferring information because a lot of students are better at finding exact information when they have to locate here questions. That's an aspect that needs to be worked on. You can see the black on the right hand side, that's the state average for the reading for this particular year group, and on the left hand side is where the school average sits. So you can see for this student, they're below the state and the school average. You can see they're at the very minimum standard for Year 7. They have got the competent skills in reading comprehension, but they need further work to move up towards a more competent skill level with this. So some more focus, and we'll have a look at specific things for this student in this example later on. With the writing on the right hand side, you can see the data here. The student's much closer to the school average on the left there, and in the same band as well as the national average. So they're sitting on par at band 6 at the average for writing skills. So it might have been a hard writing this year for that particular year group, but they are sitting in the average, and you can see at the bottom some of the areas that were tested. This is for all students in Year 7. Okay, the next bit of data we've got here is the language conventions and the numeracy. You can see a range of skills here for this particular student's example. So this is the Year 7 student. They sat in band 6 for spelling, and then there's some facts and information later on that you can have a look at, that I'll direct you to specific words that they've misspelled. Now, if there's patterns, you can identify those patterns and work out the word groups and do specific practice. The teacher will be able to unpack that in school, but you could also work on that with your child as well. With the grammar, there's a few issues, and if you have a look back with the writing, they do go hand in hand. The spelling, the grammar, and the writing here, we can see they're all very similar level. So there is a whole effect where we need to work together to improve that cohort of skills of spelling, writing, and grammar. So this student sits at the very top of Band 5, which is just the minimum standard for grammar and punctuation. So some more revision and work would be helpful, and I'll show you that very soon about specific things for this student. And the last bit of data on this NAPLAN paper is the numeracy. And this is really important data as it shows a snapshot of this child, of how they're performing compared to the school, which is in a Band 7, the school, and the state, which is a Band 7, so the school's sitting very close to the national average, but the child's at Band 6. So there is some gaps here as well that the child will need to focus on in numeracy to build that up to national average. Okay, this is a summary of skills assessed in the NAPLAN. This is very good for informing teaching practice and revision. This is just the general areas that have been assessed, and it does change from year to year with the writing. Sometimes they use persuasive text and other times it's creative writing. But the rest of the categories are consistent in NAPLAN. This is the item map of individual student responses, and this is really important information for teachers and for parents that shows you specific things that the child did wrong. So this is an example of a student, and in the example you can see on the right the things that the student got wrong, so you can focus on those, and the types of questions on the left they got right. So these are things they can do, and on the right hand side these are things that they need specific help with. So in the reading comprehension, so inference for example, identifying. So if a student's having issues with identifying, it's really important to revise that, because that's the questions where you're getting from gist reading, you're getting from using Super 6 type strategies to understand what happened and why, and summarizing skills are really important to develop this. So reading with your child at home every night, very short text or a part of a chapter of a book that they might be reading, and asking them to summarize or give a gist and summary, and just to make sure they've identified all the main ideas. So that's something that can be worked on at home through reading and summarizing, and at school as well. That's an ongoing skill that's developing. With the writing, you can see similarly on the right hand side things that the student has got wrong specifically in this NAPLAN. And remember, it's a snapshot. It depends on how the student responded on the day to the text that they were given. And the student found the persuasive writing text a bit difficult in terms of writing complex sentences and sustaining their argument. So that's a skill that could be developed through everyday essay writing in school and at home as well. Okay, this is the spelling that I was mentioning earlier, and this identifies the words that the student spelt wrong. So they can be revised, you can look for patterns. There's a whole range. You can just see on the right hand side the words that the student spelt wrong and right. And similarly with grammar and punctuation. So looking for patterns on the right hand side of what the student's getting wrong, and if there is a pattern, identifying it and working on it, just doing little bits of revision ongoing, because all of them do work hand in hand, the spelling, grammar and the writing, to develop the student's skill. Okay, and the last one, I've just highlighted a couple here. The numeracy for the student that they're having issues with in this example, and patterns are identified, so that's why I've highlighted them, and it'd be really good to target some teaching at those skills for this student in this example. Okay, so with NAPLAN there's a whole range of good, bad and ugly that comes from it. It's very helpful in learning support to understand some of the areas that can be developed for the students. We use it in learning support to identify students that need to be extended and need additional support if they're not meeting national benchmarks. And if they are at the minimum national benchmarks, we need to look at strategies such as Bump It Up that we're doing this year to help improve the minimum competency of the students so that they are functioning in society quite competently, able to read and identify text and analyse text and be literate and have those sound skills.